Hey there, LRES 546 Quantitative Methods. Welcome to week 2. Um, Today I'm going to do an R tutorial. I'm actually going to do two of them. I'm going to do part 1 and part 2. So this one's going to be part 1. So first things first, we are gonna do, let's see, install R and R Studio. In case you haven't already done this, you can do it from right here. And there's gonna be a bunch of resources on this. So yeah, just get R and R Studio installed. This page from Colorado State is useful. But it honestly, it's pretty darn easy. This one, this R Studio Education, we'll walk you through it. But it's pretty darn easy. You just kind of go here. I'm not going to do it right now because this is an older computer, and this will kind of like make things go haywire. But you would just install this R, and then you would go over here and do R Studio. I work on a Mac, so this is giving you Mac options, but obviously you would do a Windows option if you work on a Windows machine. So first things first, get that installed, and if you have any problems, contact me and or Lauren, and we'll get you set up. Then the next thing that you're going to want to do is go to our book down page. And so this is it's linked in Canvas. So I'll walk you through that. Where's Canvas? Right there. Log into Canvas. And so if you haven't already, I would bookmark our book down page, which is just going to be right there. And then let's see, where else could you find it? So this is a module. Apparently this is not published for you. I think I published it as a module. Let's have a look. Nope. Okay, it's not in there. So maybe I put it in the announcements. Yep. Yep. So you're going to be going here to this R tutorial. So this is just a tutorial. This isn't graded or anything. This is just for your own practice. If you're new to R, this will get you up and running. If you have experience with R, this will just be a little bit of practice and refresher. So you're going to go to chapter 2 in this book down, and we'll be working from this book all semester. So I would bookmark this page. Have a read through this page. Okay, just kind of familiarize yourself with what we're going to do. These are the things that we're going to run through, just some basics in R. I would like for you, we are going to use projects. And so before you get started, have a read of this short article by Jenny Bryan, who used to be a stats professor and now is a software engineer at RStudio. And this just outlines best practices and why you should use projects. So projects, we're gonna work in projects, and I'll show you what that means here in a second. But projects make it such that all of your pathways are relative. So it makes loading files much easier. It makes folder management much easier, and then it also makes your work shareable, so you can share it with other people because all of the paths are relative. And so it's why what we're about to do, which is go to GitHub and download a folder, will work for all of us. So I'm going to open up my LRES 546, and I'm actually going to delete this. This is what we're going to work on today, this unit 1. That's just me working on that yesterday. So I'm going to get rid of that so we can all start fresh. So have a read of this, and then just read through this page, and then go to this link right here. So part 1. So that's going to take you to another book down page. You can get in here and have a look through this briefly, but this is what we're going to do. We're basically going to load some data, and then we're just going to make some figures, and we're going to use data visualization, the making of figures, just as a way to acquaint ourselves with R in RStudio. So RStudio is the IDE, the development environment that we're going to use to work with R. So you've installed R, you've installed RStudio. Now we're going to this this intro to data viz page. Have a read through, particularly this first part. There's also, this is chapters 1, 2, and 3 for R for data science. This is actually that is the older version. I would recommend the chapters from the older version and the new version aren't really very much different, but you might as well just work off the new one. So you would just search for this R for data science, 2nd edition. Have a look at chapters 1, 2, and 3. And then what we're going to do is we are going to go to this GitHub link. All right, and so this is GitHub. It's going to have everything in here that you're going to need. A little README. Have a look at the README. Always give those a look. Sometimes they have useful information. Sometimes they're, pretty minimal. And then all of this stuff we're going to download. So we're going to this green button. We're going to click on code, and we're going to say download zip. Then you have to unzip the zip, right? So on a Mac, that's just basically clicking on it. But on a PC, I think you have to actually unzip the thing. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take this folder. You're going to take the folder, not the zip. Take that folder and drag it in to your folder for this class, LRES 546. Okay, and so if you haven't already, you should make a folder for this class because we're going to be doing this weekly. We'll be going to GitHub and we'll be downloading a folder from there and bringing it into our working directory. And so you're going to build a library of these projects as we move through the semester. All right, so we have that where we want it, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go to this thing that ends in R project. So we're going to open up a project, and the little symbol for the R project is this little glass box. So we're going to open that from right there. By opening the project, what this is going to do is it's going to put us into that folder. So it tells us right here, in this bottom right, this window over here, this is showing me that the folder that it's working in is the desktop, and then that Unit 1 data visualization desktop, LRES 546, and then the Unit 1 that we just downloaded. Okay, and so that is happening because I just opened the project Yeah, that's why it's happening. So it puts us right into that folder. And it'll also tell you up at the top of RStudio that that's where we are. So this over here is the console. All right. And so we can type things in there. We can say get working directory. It'll tell us where we are. It's also telling us up here and down here. In that article from Jenny Bryan, she tells you why you shouldn't start off your scripting with something that says set working directory. So read that article and that'll make more sense. You can do, this is, you can do whatever you want in the console, but what we're going to do is we are going to write in our markdown. So in this tutorial, we're going to work from something that's listed as blank, Unit 1 data viz blank. And so in most of these weekly modules, there's going to be something that says, Unit 1 blank, and then generally there'll be something that says Unit 1 partial. That means it has some of the code, but not all of it. And then sometimes there'll be a complete one. So this week, if you need to refer to this complete one because you just want to see the full code, you can go to here. But I'm going to walk through all of it with you today, so you shouldn't need this, but it's there if you do need it. All right, so console, we're going to work out of a markdown, and then this environment is where when we like load data and stuff like that, that's going to show up here. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do, we're going to open up this. So this is an R markdown. R markdown is a way that we can have text in here, we can have links in here, and then we can also have actual code. So markdowns are useful, and they're what we're going to be using this semester. I will just show you how I set up my view. So I do the preview in window, which means that when we make a figure, it's going to show up down here in the lower right. And then I also do chunk output in the console. So this is a chunk. And the way that you get chunks is you go to this little button right here, and by doing that we install an R chunk. So that's a chunk. So when I run something from in here, the output is going to show up down here, not inline. So inline would mean that it would show up like in here. And I don't like it personally because it just kind of like crowds where you're actually doing your coding. So that's how I set up my view, preview and window, chunk output and console. And then the next style thing, if you go to tools, global options, appearance, you can set this editor theme. So you can change your font size, and then you can choose any of these different themes that you like. I use this one down at the bottom called Vibrant Pink. But yeah, just pick out one that works well for you and works with your eyes. Okay, so have a read through this stuff. You can stop this video at any time that you want. Have a read through this stuff. And actually, I have a new puppy at my feet and he's chewing on my chair. The first thing we actually want to do, and I want you guys to do this with all of your work, is replace the blank with your last name. And that way when you turn in your work, we know who it's from, rather than getting 8 files that say unit 1 blank. So first things first, add your name to the file, save that. The other thing that's nice about that is then you also have this blank version just sitting there in case like something goes wrong with this file and you need to go back to the original. Yeah. A lot of the stuff that we do, it'll have a place for you to put your name up here as well. This one doesn't because you're not actually turning it in, but you'll see that in the future ones. Okay, and I'm back. I just had to go get a chew for Goose the puppy, so he stopped chewing on my feet and my chair. Yeah, so now we've saved it. We've got our name in the file, and now we can get started. Have a read through here. We're currently looking at this in source mode. You can also do it in visual mode, which makes it a little bit more, that'll make it look a little bit more like the actual HTML, this stuff, if you prefer. And I think that, yeah, this allows you, to actually click on links. So either way, I'm gonna go back to the source and I'm gonna get rid of the outline. Okay, so now we can get started. Tidyverse. So first thing that we're going to do is, if you haven't installed Tidyverse, you are going to get rid of this little pound symbol and install the Tidyverse. What does this say? One or more of the packages to be updated are currently loaded. Okay, Restarting, so you just say yes. If you already have it installed, I actually didn't need to do this, but it'll say you need to restart because this is already installed. Then after you install that, you're going to want to comment that out. So commenting out just means that R doesn't see it as code, it's just text. And then after you've installed it, then you're going to load the library. Once you load that library, it's going to put in these different packages. So tidyverse is a package of packages. So ggplot for making figures, Tibble, which is like the tidyverse version of a table, way of storing data. TidyR for tidying data, Reader for reading in CSVs, Per for iteration, dplyr for data wrangling, Stringer for using for working with strings, which are characters. So like if we had a list of our names, that would be a string. And then categorical variables with this thing called forcats. And then this conflicts thing down here, all of this is telling you is that it's giving dplyr priority over. So there's a function in dplyr called filter, and it's giving priority to the dplyr filter over the stats filter. That's what this is saying. And similarly with the lag, the dplyr lag, as opposed to the stats lag. So if you just were writing some code and you said lag, it's going to assume that you're talking about the dplyr lag. And if you wanted to use the stats lag, you would have to say stats lag. So that's what that is telling you. All right, so now we've got the tidyverse loaded, and then what we're going to do is we are going to load some CSVs. I'm going to make this lowercase because I prefer to just write everything lowercase. And RBI. So read underscore CSV is the tidyverse version of reading in a CSV. So use read underscore CSV because it'll bring it in as a tibble, whereas read dot CSV will not bring it in as a tibble because read dot CSV is a base R command. So don't use that. Use the underscore. So we're gonna read these three in. And I was kind of sloppy with how I wrote these CSVs in. I was actually surprised that they came in properly because I didn't match the capitalization, but it worked. Normally, if something is misspelled, like as an example, if I try this, it'll tell me that it doesn't exist. Because I've misspelled it. So now we have these three data frames loaded. And a couple of things. When you first load a data frame, you generally want to kind of ask what the structure of that data frame is, and you do that just by saying str of the data frame. So there's kind of a few main types of data that you'll have in data frames. Characters, we just talked about that, like strings. And so Pine is the name of the watershed, and that's a character. So text generally. Numbers, so this is cubic feet per second, so this is stream flow. So this is a number. The surrogate is another character. So generally we have characters, numbers, date times, which is this POSIX CT, so dates and times. And then you can also have categorical variables. So those are like the main ones. But you generally want to look at in what's the structure of your data frame. The main thing that we'll get into at some point is dealing with dates. So this one came in as a date, which is convenient. Sometimes it'll come in as a character, and then we'll need to use a package called lubridate, which loads with the tidyverse to make this thing into a date. So generally you want to have a look at the data frame by querying structure of the data frame. The other thing that you want to do when you download data is exploratory data analysis, which is just doing stuff like that. What's the structure? And then secondly, just plotting the stuff that you have downloaded. That's always like the first thing to start with. You can make a plot. It'll let you kind of see like what's the range, what does the data look like, how long is the time series, are there any gaps, are there outliers? So that's always the first thing that you want to do. So this says plot stream flow, the CFS column by the date time column, and we're going to do that as a line. So there's a couple ways of doing this. We'll do it kind of the standard way first. So we tell it what the data is, and then we say we've got the aesthetics are X and Y. So this X, so we can say, show me the head of the Pine data frame. And that can be pretty useful if you can't remember the column names. So we wanted date time and CFS. And we wanted to do that as a line. So we say plus line, genome line. And then because I set it up right here, that shows up down there. And you'll see that like all of my output is also showing up down here in my console as opposed to up here in line, which is convenient. Now we're going to make this a GM point, not a line, and we're going to change the line point, or the point type. So you can have a look here for what kind of point you want. Now with these things, you'll do a lot of copying and pasting, right? Like once you've written this once, you don't need to keep writing it over and over again. So there's just an open circle, and you can go to that link and kind of just play around with these things. But there's a bunch of different, there's a bunch of different symbols. So I mentioned that there's a couple of ways to do ggplot, and I use what's referred to as pipes. So that right there is a pipe, and what that is going to do is it says take this data frame and then do this stuff to it. And so I use pipes a lot, so I'm just going to do that here. So this, where I'm saying, I'm telling it what data to use right here. And this, where I'm saying I give it the data first, and then I do the ggplot call. These are equivalent. They're the same thing. So it's just a style thing. I just happen to like to use pipes. So that's pipes, and we'll get more into pipes. Okay, so here it's asking you what if we put the color blue in the aesthetic. So as a tip, doing that is wrong, or as a hint. But we're going to do it just to see what happens when we do it incorrectly. So if we say color equals blue right here, it thinks that this is a variable, right? And so it doesn't really know what to do. And so that's why this doesn't work properly. If we want to literally say the color is blue, we would put it on here. So that's how you can control the color. Let's see what we're doing next. So we're going to control with the third variable. All right, so we're going to do it as a line again. Okay, first we're going to make it blue. So this is going to be, we're going to change this back to a line. And so that's now a blue line. Next thing we're going to do, we are going to add a theme. And you can click here to go and see what theme you like. When we want to add more lines to a ggplot, we just put a plus. So if you start typing theme in, it'll give you all these different themes. I like to use line draw. I just think it's kind of clean. The next thing that we can do is update the axis labels. Again, I'm going to go back up to this chunk and I'm going to copy and paste it down. Because all that we're doing down here is we're just updating the axis labels. So add that, labs, x equals, I'm going to say nothing because we don't need to tell it that it's a date. So I'll do both. I'll do it with date first and then I'll do it with nothing. Y is discharge, which is Q, CFS. But if you don't want anything there because it's kind of obvious that that's a date, you just put nothing in the quotations and that'll go away. Now we can color by a variable. Here we're going to color by discharge, which doesn't make sense because we're plotting discharge, but we're just doing this as an illustration. So if we had something like temperature or something like that, like right here, say we had temp in that data frame, we would put that there, and that would make a lot more sense. You know, like oftentimes the temperature of the water will go down as the flow increases in natural settings. If you're in like Phoenix and it's coming over really hot asphalt, it could go up. So anyway, so I put it in here as a variable, and then I ran this code, and it defaulted to this line because this ggplot is giving this priority over this because this comes second. So that's why this still looks like this. So I'll run this again. So I run that again, and it's disregarding this thing right here because we're telling it the color is blue right there. But if I get rid of that and run this again, what happened here? Oh, because I have temp and there's nothing called temp. So see, it's coloring by the discharge. So that's how you would color by a variable. So if it is actually a variable, you put it up in the aesthetic. If it's not, you just want to say, hey, make this color pink. Then you would just say color equals pink. Okay. So those are different ways of coloring. Down here in this actual geom line or geom point, you can just tell it, make it gray, blue, whatever. Up here in the aesthetic, you're coloring by a variable. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to get into adding a third variable. So we're going to load this SNP data frame, which has Pine and North Fork Dry Run. Okay. So if you want to kind of pause for a minute and get some practice, you could read in the data frame and make a plot. So pause it, give that a shot, see how it goes, and then come back. So we've already read in, so we want to use the SNP. So we've already read that in. And we're asked color by stream, adding the color to the aesthetic. and we're gonna have a look at the headers. So let's say head S&P. So we're gonna color by this station ID. The other thing that you can do, so that was head, we can also have a look at the tail. And that's the bottom of the data frame. So North Fork Dry Run. So we're gonna be coloring by this character column, which is just the name of the stream. So instead of Pine now we're using SNP. We've got date time, we've got CFS, and then our color is gonna be, I can't remember if I need to see, I have to get rid of this. There we go. Yep, so we've got date time, we've got discharge, and then we're coloring by the ID. Alright, then we can make that look a little bit better. Let's see, we've done most of it, like we've added a theme, we've got, you know, axes labeled. The one last thing that we could do is in this labels line, we could change, so this is saying X, so this is referring, this is labels from this aesthetics line. So it's saying X is gonna be whatever we put in there, Y is gonna be this, and then the third thing that we can change is this station ID, which is going to be the variable color. So we could say stream, right? Remember, if you don't want anything in there, you just do it like that. So we could also get rid of the legend or the title on the legend over there, like such. So that looks pretty good. Facets. So we are gonna do some faceting. So that faceting just means that it's kind of got like multiple panels. So let's see, let's just stick with S&P. We're gonna do date, time, and Q. We're gonna get rid of this because instead of doing it like this over here in the window, we're gonna use a facet instead. We're gonna do GM line, and then we're gonna do a facet wrap. Oops. Facet wrap. Let's just see. Oh, what just happened there? Well, let's just see what this looks like. I'm running the wrong line of code, that's why. So, this error, you'll get better at reading errors. We have to tell it, and I think that I mentioned this up here. Yeah, you have to tell it what to facet on. So what we would say is facets. So then we have that, right? So that's another way of looking at two different streams within one data frame. We can also say, if we want them top and bottom, we say n rows too. And that'll look like that. So those don't look particularly great, but you know how to kind of update and make stuff look better. Need a plus there. We're not going to do it today, but you can look into how to control the number of ticks on this axis. So I'd probably just go 0, 500, and 1,000. And a quick Google search will bring that up for you. The next thing that we could do is we can do 2 variable faceting. And to do that, we're going to use something called a facet grid. So read through here. let's just paste that all down there. Oops. So we are gonna paste this stuff down here. This is gonna become a facet grid. And we are gonna do it on 2 variables, and so the what we write in here looks a little bit different than what we had up top because it's a little bit different of a function. So if you wanted to know about anything, you go down to this console and you put question mark, that's a good, and then it'll give you an explanation of how to use this. So we're gonna do station ID and month, and we're gonna do scales are free. Which just means that it allows it to auto adjust the scales. Again, you know, so this is months 1, 2, and 3, and then the watershed. Yeah, again, you would, if you were making a report or something, you would spend some time making this look prettier, but you get the general gist of it. Let's see, what else we got coming? We are going to do a box plot. Wait, stop it. Okay, so we are at the box plot part of this. So we're also going to add, we're going to make the Y scale a log scale. Hey, so I'm just going to paste that again. SMP ggplot. We're doing station ID. This is going to be stat box plot. Right there. Hey, no, stop it. Get rid of that. That should be fine. Let's see what happens. Yeah. And then the last thing that we want to do here is we are going to, hey, stop. We are going to log this scale. And so that goes scale Y log 10. The next thing that we can do is install Plotly. So install this if you don't have Plotly, then load it. One thing to know is that every time you come into R, you're going to need to load packages again. So once you install it once, you don't have to keep installing every time, but every time you will need to come and just at least load the Plotly. So what I'm going to do, so this, I'm going to make this plot an object, right? So this is an assignment operator, so I'm going to say this thing called P is this figure. So this is going to be station ID, CFS, this is going to be stat box plot, line draw, and then we want it to be scale Y log 10. And so that's going to make this an object, and so that then shows up here in our environment. So then if we want to, so Plotly makes these things interactive. So then, you can click around on it. Median, third, first to third quartiles, upper fence, the range, max, min. So that's pretty convenient. I think that this will knit. I'm gonna knit this real quick just to show you about knitting while we're at this Plotly. Knit to HTML. So by making it in HTML, you could send this HTML to a colleague in an email, and they the Plotly what's the word that I'm looking, the functionality of Plotly would work for them. So you would send them an HTML, they would open it, and then if they went to this section, yeah, see, like this would work for them. As opposed to if you sent them, if you sent this as a PDF, they don't have that functionality. Okay, and then we just have a little bit left to go. We can control the size of points. And you can make them transparent by setting an alpha. ggplotly, you already know how to do that. And then you can have points and lines on the same figure. So if you're working with water quality data and they're only taking a water quality measurement, say every 2 weeks or monthly, you would want to have it as points and then put a line between those. So you can play around with that. If you put geoline and then you say line type equals dashed, and dashed is in quotation marks, it'll put a dashed line between the points, which is generally good if you have discontinuous data. So like water quality is going to be discontinuous. It might be weekly, it might be monthly, whatever. You don't want to plot that as a line because that suggests to your reader that it's continuous data. So continuous data would be like flow, or if you have a temperature sensor or a conductivity sensor in the stream, that would be continuous. And so those things you could do as lines. Stuff where you go out monthly and take a measurement, that you're going to want to do as points. So I'm going to let you guys just play around with the last bit of that and see how it goes. You have the complete RMD, so you can go to that. You also have, I'm just going to save that. Oh, so just one last thing. When you knit, it's going to save. And so now if I go down here, where is that? Yeah, so then we have this, with my name at the end. So this is now saved. You see that the saves is grayed out. And then I also have this as an HTML. So once you knit, that should show up there. And I'm just going to close out of there. I'm going to let you guys play around with the last bit. But recall that if you go back to our chapter 2, this is the repo for that. All of this stuff, so this is the complete. So you guys have the complete, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to replicate this stuff down at the bottom. Just give it a shot, work on it on your own, just to see how you do. And if you have any issues with it, just go back to this page, and it'll have you up and running. All right, well that's it for part 1. I will get part 2 done here shortly. Reach out to me or the TA if you have any questions, and we're happy to hop on a Zoom or a phone call or just do emails. And happy coding. We will see you soon. Okay, bye.